Welcome to Imperfect Momming. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we are actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So, what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can still all be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to our parent support call, and today we're going to talk about being intentional with connecting with our kids.
Hello, everybody. Yes, we want to continue the discussion from last week, especially in light of the fact that we have passed the second Friday of the month of January, which is National, I'm not sure if it's officially called National Quitting Day, right, Alish? But apparently that's when 80% of Americans have quit their New Year's resolutions. And what we had spoken about in our newsletter this week was about how sometimes quitting is actually the goal inside of parenting. And then we sort of unpacked when we want to be intentional about not quitting, that it's good to have intentions instead of goals. So we're just going to continue to unpack that a little bit. And like one of the questions that I had for you, Alish, because I thought about it after our call last week was, we really unpacked the notion of, really getting in touch with that intuitive part of ourselves, like when we're following the advice of somebody else and doing what somebody else says we ought to do as parents, but then it doesn't feel right or it doesn't feel aligned in our bodies. So I really wanted to unpack that a little bit. Like, what was that like for you to shift, and what helped you to, number one, make the shift, and then also decide what we were going to do instead? Because that's part of it. Part of it is knowing what we don't want to do, but then also then putting in the tools to figure out what we do want to do, especially if it's not something that we're used to, it wasn't embodied for us because we didn't experience it as a child.
Yeah. I mean, it honestly, it wasn't a very comfortable moment for me where someone had told me that the way to get your children to do or not, or to more specifically not do something you don't want them doing, is to spank them. And at that time in my life, I was going through a divorce. I was in a lot of emotional turmoil. And I had a moment where, I think that he was maybe 18 months old, somewhere between 14 and 18 months. And I spanked him, and it was like he didn't have any reaction. Maybe it's because I was spanking through a diaper or whatever the reason, but there was no reaction. And so then it was like, well, obviously it's not doing anything if he's not reacting. And so I spanked him again. And maybe by the third time I recognized that that I was just angry, that I was spanking him out of anger. And there was, and my hand hurt, and there was no there was no reaction. And it was like, why am I doing this? I actually wasn't, I was spanked. I always say that I was spanked twice. And that's what I remember, is that I was spanked once by each of my parents. And both of them were like, go to your room and you're going to get a spanking. And then there was this waiting period of, it's going to hurt and all this. And then it was like it was nothing. The, and so it was, and I do remember my mom saying that she spanked my brother the most, and she spanked each kid less and less. And that it was, I think kind of along the lines of like, it just didn't feel right for her. Anyway, so that was kind of in my head too. So sorry, I'm kind of processing out loud as I'm talking, but it just in that moment I recognized, like, in order for him to even recognize that I was doing something, like, I would probably have to hit him so hard that it would break my hand. And that's an experience from someone in my past too, where their parent spanked them and broke their hand. And I was like, well, that's for sure not what I want. And I want something that's effective. I don't want something that is ineffective and makes me feel like crap and feels really out of alignment.
Yeah, it's really interesting as I'm listening to you processing about how we really we parent our kids' behavior instead of parenting our kids sometimes, right? I think that's really the underlying gist of what it is you're describing. And when what you were doing didn't impact what he was doing behaviorally, you were like, wait, this isn't working. But sometimes actually, let's say, for example, a spanking, right? It could and has with many parents that we've worked with, it can be effective, right? Like you can get the kid is going to comply if, like you were even saying just about you going to your room and then anticipating the spanking. Like, do you even remember what it was that the behavior that they were that they didn't want you to do, or that they were trying to teach you to do differently?
No.
No. Like, you have no recollection of that. All you are focusing on at that point is this, and we call it disciplinary action, but really to discipline, the root of discipline is disciple, which is even, from a religious perspective, like the disciples were the teachers and the students, right? So I don't remember what the Latin term is exactly, discipler. I don't know I don't want to like mess that one up, but really to discipline is to teach. And so when you paused in that moment and really reflected on, well, what is he learning? Like, what is this 18-month-old learning by me hitting him? And that moment of recognition of, this isn't even about me teaching. This is about me just having an outlet for my own anger. And that's huge. So when we talk about being intentional in our parenting, really what is the goal, and I'm using quotations, right? What is the goal, or what is the intention of what it is behind what we are actually doing in any given moment? And frankly, the way we learn as humans is when we have connection, right? It's not when we're disconnected or disassociated from what's happening. And you got disassociated from what was happening when you got sent to your room to wait for your spanking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what's present for me is that one thing that I'm still working on is practicing the pause and not blowing up in the moment and then, repairing afterwards, which I'm grateful that I have that tool, and I would love to not have to use that one, but use the practicing the pause. But my son is going to be 12 next month, and what became very clear to me yesterday was that elementary school was so easy for the level of intelligence that my son is in, that my son has. And he's gone into junior high with the expectation that that's how school is. And he said yesterday they went from easy mode to hard mode overnight, and that's just not fair. And I was like, you're right, it's not fair. So let's figure out together how we can level up your skills to tackle hard mode, because you're capable of hard mode. You just currently don't have the skills that you need because you didn't learn them in easy mode. But what's very clear is that there's a disconnect from where he was in elementary school versus where he is in middle school. But yesterday, after this, I was in my feelings about how I felt about his horsing around in school, which is what he's always done, is horsed around in school. But in my mind, it didn't matter because there was good grades and he was learning. And now the grades aren't there, and I don't know if he's learning. And so we had a really cool evening last night where he came home, and I like to give him a break from school, and then he did his chores, and then we came in and we did an exercise, or we did one of his homework assignments together, and then he took a 15-20 minute break, and then we did another homework, and there was dinner in there, and we played a game. And so it was a totally different experience than how I like my default reaction. And I don't remember my parents having that kind of reaction to me in school, but that came from somewhere.
What is your default reaction? You said it's different than my default reaction. What would your default reaction have been?
I mean, I got angry that,
Okay.
yeah, like there was, I found an assignment in his backpack where he basically got 1 out of 5 points because the assignment that was done had 4 sentences to complete it, and behind that it's like, here's all the things that you didn't do, and that's why you got the grade you got. And it just kind of clicked in my mind, like, he's not getting bad grades because he's unable to finish the assignments. He's getting these bad grades because I know that I've heard feedback from the teachers that he's messing around in class, which I think he's always done. But he's expecting, easy mode in middle school, and it's just not there anymore. But I didn't have any of that awareness. I made an assumption about how he was behaving at school. And it wasn't until I had a conversation with my fiance, who is Xander's basically a clone of him, that when it's always so easy, you literally don't learn the skills. So it's not until it starts getting not easy that the skills are required. And by that time, you're just like, well, I don't have any skills. It's always been a cakewalk.
This is so huge because rather than just focusing on the grades and then sort of saying to him, well, you need to get better grades. You've always gotten better grades. What, like you're grounded until you get better grades, things that a lot of us in the parenting realm can do. You're really, really chasing that why and sort of wondering, well, why is it that he's not getting those grades? And by doing that, identifying what skills are lacking, and then actually together figuring out how to get him the skills. And he's figuring out, he's learning about himself. He's learning about his learning, which is massive. I mean, so much better about the information, but he's learning about his learning and now having the opportunity to build those skills that he's not going to just need in school, but skills that he's going to need in life. And what I also loved about what you said, Alicia, is how you didn't just go into like work mode, but how you really balanced it out with still giving him that break, with still, having that like dinner time and play time and break time and making it fun and, really just balancing it and keeping that connection. Like you're very intentional about what you are doing in terms of, keeping that connection to him to figure out what it is he needs and how it is you can provide it. So bravo, that's amazing. That is, such a powerful, powerful lesson for us as parents. And I know we're at time where we're going to go into the room now and actually talk to some of you who are here with us. So thank you to the rest of you for joining us. Really hope this discussion was helpful, and keep being intentional about what you're doing.
All right, we'll be back next week with another parent support call. Bye, guys. Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Momming. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit AliciaLyons.com. That's ALYSIALYONS.com. See you next time.